Welcome to Where's the Proof? Organizing and Writing Genealogical Findings. This is part 3 of 3, Composing a Written Proof. I'm Lisa Stokes, an accredited genealogist in the Mid-South region of the United States. I accredited with ICAPGen in January of 2018, and I have been a study group leader since that time, helping applicants learn to write their Level 1 reports. This is the last video in this 3-part presentation. If you're watching the recording of any of these presentations rather than live at RootsTech, please be sure to watch parts 1 and 2 before watching this video. They contain fundamental information that is expanded upon in this video. So let's get started with part 3, Composing a Written Proof. I developed the model for a well-written proof to use in the ICAPGen study groups. Writing genealogy proofs can be such a different task with the focus on proving events and relationships instead of telling a compelling story. Many participants really stumble with this, and they just simply needed a reminder of the basic writing skills that they learned during their schooling. So these same principles can apply to writing genealogy proofs. So as a teacher, I taught my students the concept of tell the reader what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. This is part of the model, and it's a reminder to do the same thing with your genealogy proofs. Remember that the model is not rigid or strict in how you approach your material, but it does give you a framework to help you keep focused on your writing and help you understand what it is you need to be doing. So here's the model. I will cover each of the elements during the presentation. So once you understand this proofwriting concept, you can use your own creativity and your own personal style as you're writing your proofs in your genealogy reports. The first element of the model is the title. And the title serves as the objective for the whole proof. And here's an example: birth date and birthplace of John Jones. Most often, a statement works best for the title, but sometimes, if needed, you could ask a question. Having that objective for each proof really keeps the writer focused on exactly what they're trying to prove in this section of their report. So, for example, if the objective is proving a parent-child relationship, then you're going to avoid bringing in details and information for John Jones's marriage or his death or other things that really don't help prove his birth date and birthplace. Sometimes a question for a title is needed to properly convey the objective of the proof. This is the title for the proof that we will go over later on in this presentation. How many times was Michael Wegner married? As try as I might, whatever statement I tried to find just really wasn't conveying what I needed to in this proof, and so I went with a question. The next element of the model is the overview. In the overview, the writer tells the reader any background information that they need about what the proof is going to cover. Here we have an example. How many times was Michael Wegner married is our title, and our overview states, a note in the margin of a family group sheet found amongst the client's papers states that Michael Wegner was married 3 times and had 3 different sets of children. However, only 2 marriage records were found for Michael. As I go through these examples, please note that some of them are simplified for presentation purposes, and all of the footnote markings have been removed to keep everything simple. But remember to be sure to cite every stated fact with a solid footnote citation. The next step in the model is presenting the sources. by analyzing and correlating the information and the evidence that's found to help reach that strong conclusion. You're going to want to add sources as needed, and you could use narrative, tables, bullet points, abstracts. There's quite a few different techniques and tools you can use to add your sources to the proof. You want to make sure that you are showing thorough research in your proof and that you are using the source citations to help make sure that everything is solid. For additional tools and techniques that will help present sources and help you assemble the evidence, you can watch part 2 of this video presentation. So now I'm going to go over just some basic tips and principles and techniques to use during the writing. The first one is to use transitions. Transitions help the proof flow smoothly, and it lets the reader know what's coming next. They could be a one or two sentences, or even transitions could be just one word. Here is an example. The following sources give proof for the birth of John Jones. Nice and simple. This one's a little bit more involved. Clues from Michael Wegner's marriage records and Michael's death record prove that Michael only had 2 wives and not 3, as suggested by the family group sheet. The following points prove this conclusion. Next, we want to make sure that we use a statement of information, which is a statement that conveys the information found in the source. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Giving the reader information that is stated from the source gives them context on what the research findings are and how they relate to one another. If you try to just go over the sources without stating what the information is, the reader becomes very confused because they just see a source and they can't synthesize that information without you giving it to them. This is something that people struggle with, believe it or not. And so make sure that you are stating the specific information found in each source that helps prove the conclusion. Avoid listing other information found in the source that doesn't pertain to the proof objective. And remember that the citation information and all of the other source details should be listed in the footnote and not in the body of the report or in the analysis. Here's an example. The 1859 Forsyth County, Georgia marriage record for Hector Snodgrass and Susie Smithson states that they were married 26 September 1859. Another example, the 1880 U.S. Census of Harris County, Texas, states that Robert Smith was born in 1884 in South Carolina. Remember that if you don't state the information you're working with, the reader will not be able to follow your logic that you're trying to establish. And don't forget to analyze those sources and the information contained therein and the evidence that is created. And make sure that you're discussing the reliability of each of these. More about this was covered in parts 1 and 2, so go watch those set portions of the presentation. Remember that as you are writing, the goal of each proof is to work towards a solid, well-developed conclusion as the research and the evidence are presented. So you're going to want to use what I like to call points of logic. A point of logic is a stated idea that leads to and solidifies a strong conclusion. Keep the points of logic simple as possible and avoid unnecessary and confusing details. Next, be sure to correlate and layer sufficient sources, information, and evidence to develop that strong conclusion, and make sure that you have accuracy there. Usually, one piece of evidence by itself is insufficient to prove a life event or relationship, but when it's layered and correlated with other evidence, it can build a stronger and more accurate proof. The next element in our model is to resolve any conflicts that have been found. Conflicts need special attention when assembling the evidence. So, first, state the conflict, then give possible explanations as to why the conflict exists, and resolve the situation with analysis and correlation if possible. And then remember, when there's not enough information and evidence to support a conflict resolution, be sure to state that the problem is unresolved and recommend further research to continue resolving the conflict. So here's an example. There are conflicts in the names for Anna Casey on her marriage record to Abe Merriman. First, Anna used the name Nanny instead of Anna on the marriage record and on several other records. Nanny is a very common nickname for Anna, explaining this usage. It is unknown why the name Naomi was listed on the return portion of the marriage record, other than Naomi sounds very similar to Nanny, and the clerk may have misunderstood or made a transcription error. The last element in the model is to wrap everything up with a strong final statement. While presenting the sources in the body of the proof, a well-reasoned conclusion has already been developed and presented. The strong final statement has a different purpose, which is to remind the reader of the conclusion in simple terms at the end of the proof. Remember that the final statement is not the place to add new information or new sources or new evidence. Qualifiers show the level of confidence that the researcher has for the conclusions being made. So be sure to add qualifiers to your strong final statement. Remember that few genealogical conclusions can be found to be 100% accurate. Therefore, the use of qualifiers is often needed. Here's some examples of qualifiers. Most certainly, surely, confidently, certainly, very likely, likely, probably, possibly, plausibly, and unlikely, just to name a few. You can find more details about these examples in Elizabeth Schoen Mills, Evidence Explained, pages 19 and 20. Here are some examples of using qualifiers in a strong final statement. All evidence found in census records, marriage records, and tax records corroborates the claim that Isaac M. Casey was most likely the son of Andrew J. Casey and Anna Butler. Another example, all documents listed support the hypothesis that Wilsey Gill was probably born about 1779, possibly in Fauquier County, Virginia. However, a conclusive statement cannot be made without further evidence. So we now are going to wrap up the presentation with a full example of a written proof. And the title or the objective of the proof is how many times was Michael Wegner married? Then we have our overview of the conflict. A note in the margin of a family group sheet found amongst the client's papers states that Michael Wegner was married 3 times and had 3 different sets of children. However, only 2 marriage records were found for Michael. First, his marriage to Christina Prelwitz on 21 June 1886 in Kolokolo, Poznan, Poland. And second, his marriage to Helena Kruger on 25 August 1899 in Kolokolo, Poznan, Poland. Both of these sources are digital images of the original marriage records and are deemed very reliable because they were created at the time of the event. The primary information about the marriages is detailed and appears to be accurate. So this is analysis of the sources and information. Clues from Michael's marriage record and Michael's death record prove that Michael only had 2 wives and not 3, as suggested by the family group sheet. The following points prove this conclusion. So this is a transition that helps us flow into the next portion of the proof and gives the reader some direction. Now we have some building blocks. Michael's marriage record to Christina Prelwitz does not mention that Michael was a widower from a previous marriage. So this is some negative evidence here. The second bullet, Michael was only 20 years old when he married Christina. Therefore, it is logical to believe that this was Michael's first marriage. This is a point of logic with a statement of information. In Michael's marriage record to Helena Kruger, it states that, quote, he, Michael, is a widower after the death of Christina, maiden name Prelwitz. This is a use of an extract with a point of logic. This shows that Michael did not marry anyone after the death of Christina and before the marriage of Helena. So that's a statement of explanation to help the logic flow. The next bullet, furthermore, which is a one-word transition. In Michael's death record, it states that Michael left his widow Helena, maiden name Kruger. This is another use of an extract that explains a point of logic. Then we have our next bullet point, which is a syllogism. If Helena was still living when Michael died, and she was still Michael's wife at the time of his death, then Michael could not have married a third time. And then our strong final statement that wraps up our conflict here. Examination of these two documents proves that Michael most likely had only two wives, Christina Prelwitz and Helena Kruger. Here's one last look at the model for a well-written proof. A copy of it is in the syllabus and with the syllabus materials, so feel free to download and print a copy so it can help you learn to write genealogy proofs. Thank you for watching part 3 of this video. Be sure to watch parts 1 and 2, and don't forget to download the syllabus. You can contact me at this email address. Thank you for joining me today.